What's going on, everybody? Tim from Tirfon Orbital. The horns are playing. And they're playing my tune. Okay. Yes, let's try again. What's going on, everybody? Tim from Tirfon Orbital. So I am going to go over a personal hilt today. I'm taking a liberty, and I want to go over an install that I finished for myself last week. I have so been looking forward to getting this hilt in hand and installing it. This is the Courkrus from Jawas Junkyard, and it was designed by the authority on all things Corran Horn related, Benji from Nerfherder Customs. This has been so cool to finally see this hilt go into production and be released. It's, in my opinion, it was high time that Benji had a hilt that he had his name attached to, and it should be a Corran Horn hilt or a speeder hilt, in my opinion. So it's been really, really cool watching this thing come to life. I was fortunate enough to see some of the design process when Benji was designing the hilt, and it's just been so awesome to watch him go through that process as well. It's a phenomenal hilt. I'm over the moon over this hilt. It's my new daily driver. I love everything about it. It's a phenomenally well machined hilt. I nailed the resonance in this particular install, so it sounds really good. So yeah. So anyhow, enough about that, right? Let's talk about the hilt and talk about the install itself. I'm going to do what I usually do. We're going to come into Fusion and talk about the chassis, and then we will obviously talk about the outside of the hilt and do a little demo. I did do some mild weathering on this as well, so I'd like to talk about that. But first, let's talk about Corran Horn, right? So Corran Horn is a character in the Michael Stackpole book called I, Jedi. He builds his hilt from used speeder bike parts. His particular hilt is unique in that it utilizes multiple crystals, so he can phase them in and out and adjust things like that. So the taco shop version of the chassis for this hilt does utilize some really cool crystals in them. For my install, I wanted a more utilitarian chassis, and I obviously wanted to design my own. Like, I just wanted to, take full creative control and design my own chassis. So instead of doing a crystal in mine, I just added 3 Edison filaments. I feel like I haven't used those recently, so I wanted to do something a little different, not just NeoPixel strips, so I switched it up with some Edison filaments on the chassis itself. So yeah, this is a speeder bike themed hilt. Benji designed this hilt off the cover art of I, Jedi, and it's very hard to see this hilt. I mean, this book came out in the late 80s, I think, or maybe early 90s, and it's just really only a silhouette of the hilt itself, right? So we get the general idea of the shape. We know it's from a speeder bike, so we have great reference material as to what speeder bike grips do look like from the films. So Benji took the book, took the silhouette of this, and kind of ran with the design, and I think it looks really phenomenal, right? I really appreciate the design cues and the design liberties that Benji took when designing this hilt. We've got some really awesome external design elements. I like how the external parts of this hilt also have Benji's touches to them, right? So we've got an external kill switch, which is amazing, and that's totally like a Benji thing. I've put that in a few of my personal builds, and I got that idea from Benji, especially with having a Profi board. Being able to just hit a kill switch on the external of the hilt without unscrewing your grip or anything like that is awesome. So we've got an integrated external kill switch slot in this hilt. There are also some really really awesome designed switches, right? So we've got a control box with a red and a green arrow, and they serve as like spring plunger switches to activate the switches on the chassis itself. And what I also appreciate about what Jawas Junkyard did with this hilt is they also included some stock switch NeoPixel PCBs. So essentially it's just a PCB with a tactile switch on board and two very small 2020, they might even be 1515 NeoPixels on the PCB itself. So you can animate these switches from below. So it's just a really, really well-made hilt, man. I really love this hilt. So without further ado, let's come down into Fusion and talk a little bit about the chassis, and then we'll talk about the hilt. Okay, so here's the chassis. Static chassis. I went with a static chassis for this particular build. I mean, obviously, so here's another thing that I appreciate. I appreciate when installers, people who have extensive experience with installers, I appreciate when the installer is part of a design process, right? So obviously Benji is an installer. He installs hilts. So he took that into account when designing this particular hilt. So there's plenty of room on the inside of this grip to get a big chassis, to get a 28mm speaker. So I really appreciate about that about this build. So because we've got so much space, I went a little crazy with the greeblies along each side of the chassis. Okay, we have our slots here for Edison filament. So I've got 3 of them in here. The one going down the middle is a white Edison filament, and the 2 on the sides are in blue. 28mm speaker at the bottom here. This is from Smuggler's Outpost. I did put a recessed Profi board tray in here. The Profi will slide up underneath that lip. Nerfherder Customs. This is Benji's hilt, so I wanted to put Benji's name on this chassis, right? So there it is, right there. So up top, making our way up, we've got 2 indentations. So these are for those stock switch PCBs that I mentioned, right? So we've got, they're like a rectangular shape, obviously, and they sit in these indentations and they have a tactile switch on them. And that is what those spring arrow plunger switches activate. Around back, we've got a battery tray. Man, I really need to work on navigating in Fusion. I don't know why this is always so difficult for me. Battery tray is here. I did put my logo in the battery tray. And that's it, right? Nice and simple static chassis design. There is a cutout in the upper part of the chassis as well for the kill switch leads, right? So how I do this install is I will wire up my Profi, bring all of my leads up to here, wire up my switches, and I tuck the 2 conductors for the kill switch down into the chassis, attach the chassis to the hilt, then I fish those 2 wires out, wired up my kill switch, put it back in place. PCB emitter up top. This is from Stardust Sabers. And that's it. That's all we got. Let's come up top, take a look at this hilt. All right. So here it is. This is the Courkrus from Nerfherder Customs and Jawas Junkyard. This is a hefty boy. This is a very heavy hilt. It is full stainless steel. Everything is stainless. Pommel, even the Kobold is stainless. The grip obviously is stainless. The emitter section is stainless. The switch box, everything is stainless steel. And it feels like steel. I've said this before. I actually really prefer and like hilts that are on the heavier side. To me, it makes them feel more substantial. It makes them feel like a weapon, and this is no different. I mean, this thing is an absolute beast, okay? The grip has been painted. This came from Jawas. I thought this was anodization, but I was very quickly corrected by Leon at Jawas Junkyard. This is PVD, I believe, right? So it came like a black, almost a gunmetal black, glossy from Jawas. One of the main things I wanted to do with this grip was to get it matte, right? And I'll talk about that, what else I wanted to do in a second. Weathering wise, right? Another thing I learned during this build is that you cannot cold blue stainless steel with Birchwood Casey's cold blue solution. There are some stains that are out there that you can blacken stainless with, but I am far too impatient to wait for that to ship, so I wanted to get this installed, right? So I went with heat staining on this. I heat stained the emitter. I also heat stained the bottom of the pommel and the Kobold ring. So let's talk about heat staining stainless. Because stainless holds on to heat much more efficient than like copper or bronze or brass. When you're heat staining steel, especially thick parts like this, it takes forever for it to come up to color and come up to temperature, and B, it holds on to that heat for a long time. So after heat staining this emitter, it stayed hot to the touch for about 4 hours after finishing, right? Did the same application to the pommel. Underneath, inside of the pommel, I do have a brass mesh that is just in front of the speaker. And that's it, right? So the grip, initially, when I heard this run was going to be released, my first thought was, I want to knurl this grip. Unfortunately, I could not find any machinists locally that wanted to take this specialized part on as a knurled project. I also, from what I understand, it's a little bit more difficult to knurl stainless steel. So I couldn't find anybody to knurl this for me. So I went with the next best thing. I knocked back some of that PVD with some scouring pads just to make them look a little bit more used. So the edges are a little bit more worn, right? And then I did 2 coats of matte clear. I did the first coat, let it cure fully for a day, and then did another coat. And I'm really, really happy with the result. I also put some scratches in the grip as well, just to make it look a little bit more used, okay? You will also notice there are 2 rings above and below the grip. These are purely decorative. I added these because I am so impatient. I didn't want to, so their threading is pretty long on this grip. So to shorten that threading a little bit, I just added some decorative rings. And that was also my way of just kind of putting my own touches on the hilt itself. These silver circles that you see, these are actually steel rods that I cut with a Dremel 2 size. It took forever because they're so small. So they are cut to size. The ones at the bottom that have holes in them, these are actually 3 neodymium magnets. Okay. That's it, man. So we've got our external kill switch here. Really, really awesome, responsive plunger spring switches. These are the arrows. These are lit from underneath with NeoPixel PCB. Just a phenomenal hilt. I love being able to turn the hilt on with the external kill switch too. That is so very, very, very cool, right? So let's talk about the inside of the hilt. Inside the chassis, right? Okay. God, this is such a heavy boy. So here is the chassis. I did my usual pass of pewter and onyx rub and buff on the outside of this guy. Battery tray is here. Here's our Profi board. So there are 3 Edison filaments in there as well. 28mm speaker. Let's turn this on so we can get a look at the Edison filaments. There they are. And that's it. So let's put our grip back on. I'm in my bare feet right now, and I am terrified of dropping this on my toe. It's so heavy. Such a beast. Okay, what else do we have on here? So I added my own boot sounds for this hilt. So my fonts are all different. They've got different boot sounds. Let's come down to the bottom and do a quick demo. Okay, so there are those. This was one of the, I mean, I love this. I love this. I love everything about this switch box. They're usable switches. They are not just purely decorative. These are actual plunger switches, and they're really, really well machined, not machined, but I think they're probably polycarbonate or something, but like really, really strong spring in there. It's just a phenomenal switch box, man. And the obviously that kill switch is on the outside. So obviously I have the majority of the fonts that are on here are speeder bike related fonts, and I've added my own boot sounds to them as well. I've made some minor edits to the fonts. This first font is the quintessential Corran Horn speeder bike sound font. It is, of course, Son of Corelia from Kyberphonic. And I added my own font sound to that as well. So it's the actual sound of the speeder bike, instead of saying Son of Corelia. What else we got? This is another Corran Horn themed sound font. It's called Halcyon. It's from Harry Solo Fonts. I'm sorry, I don't mean to toot my own horn. Get it? It's 2 dad jokes in one video. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I really nailed the resonance in this hilt. I mean, it's the, this is the loudest, most bassy hilt that I own. I thought that this is one of the speeder that I built. I thought this was the best sounding hilt that I had. This is a 28mm speaker, but I guess the resonance in this hilt, in the Courkrus, it's so much better. It sounds awesome. So let's put a blade in it and do a quick demo. All right, 1-inch blade holder. Tighten our set screw. Ready to go. I think I set all of the speeder fonts, I set them up with dual phase. So blade color will change with a force activation. See what else we got on here. I'm going to go back to Sons of Corelia. Son of Corelia. Put my Jesse from Kyberphonic face on. Really, really cool. One more. Yeah, like these chunkier fonts, they sound so good in this hilt. Best sounding hilt I've ever heard.
This is an N1 Starfighter. Now this is Courkrus.
That lightsaber was
I want to get to another font that's I don't often talk about. This is another font from Harry Solo that was done for me. It is a NASA space themed font, but I edited it a little bit to make it my own. If fans of The Expanse will recognize that.
Welcome to the bill.
One more.
Death to Jedi.
His hilt sounds phenomenal. Prior to this, I really thought that the Electrum Sabercraft EvoFlex was the best sounding hilt that I've ever used. This is hands down sounds way better. I love this hilt. This is it's an awesome looking hilt, right? So, and it's become my daily driver. So anyhow, so that's all I got, right? I wanted to talk a little bit about the hilt itself, talk a little bit about the install. It's been an absolute awesome experience watching Benji, go through this process. And, in my opinion, it was high time that he had a hilt that his name was attached to, and it should be a Corran Horn speeder. So, with that being said, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you very, very much for the support. If anyone has any questions about this particular build or the hilt itself, please don't be a stranger. Leave a comment. I'm open to criticism as well. And that's it. That's all I've got, everybody. So thanks for watching, and may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.